So in this tutorial, we're going to be figuring out how to create quick actions, and we're going to be creating two things. One is called static quick actions, and the other one is dynamic quick actions. So when I hold down on this, you'll see that I have some actions here. I have first action and second action, and then I have what I call dynamic actions. So my first dynamic and my second dynamic. And the whole point of these is that there will be some actions that will be available to everyone. So no matter whether you are, let's pretend you're creating an app where you have moderators and you have users. You'll have some things for everyone. Maybe it's like create a post or go to settings. That's something that everyone has. But then you'll have dynamic actions that you can do for different types of people. Maybe you're creating a social media account and you want some people to have a quick action that takes them to maybe different people's pages based on what they were on recently. So you can have dynamic buttons or dynamic quick actions, and you can have static ones that everyone gets regardless of who they are. So let's go ahead and get started by looking at the code. I broke this down into 3 pages of code. I'm going to start by creating a new project. So for me, I like to use the keyboard. That's Command-Shift-N. So I'll go to iOS, I'll create a new app, and I'll go to product name. I'm going to call it code tutorial underscore, and I'll say quick actions. All right, and we'll create that on the desktop. Okay, and the first thing is first, I like to get rid of a lot of the junk that comes ever since Swift 2.0. Let's get rid of everything up there. I'm going to get rid of everything inside of the view builder except for what I am going to put in here is a VStack, and I'll put just a text inside. Okay, let's just make it say hello. I'm going to get rid of all these functions. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. And I like to just make everything nice and clean and easy to look at. So there's that. Now we're clean. Okay, and I'm going to go back and forth between my rough project that I created in preparation and the project that we're building together. When you look up top here, you'll see this says code tutorials underscore quick action, and the other one says rough underscore. The rough is the stuff that I finished, and then, sorry about that, some extra stuff. And then the code tutorial is going to be what we're working on together. Okay, so let's start by creating a new file in our code tutorial, and I'm going to create a new Swift file, and we're going to call it logic. Okay, and we're going to go through this one first because it's kind of the foundation of what we're trying to make. So there's a few different pieces. Okay, I'm going to actually start by I'm going to copy this over and we're going to talk about it. So we have a new struct called a quick action. And one more thing we actually need to bring over is we need to import the SwiftUI library. So quick action is going to be of type hashable. It's going to conform to the hashable protocol is what I should say. And it's going to have 4 different variables inside of it, all of which are strings. That'll be the type, the title, the subtitle, and the icon. And you'll see where we use them. And then I want to create a really quick and easy way to turn these items into a quick action or a shortcut item. So an instance of a quick action in the context of Swift and SwiftUI and XCode is called a shortcut item. So if I were to initiate or initialize a quick action, I would have to put these 4 parameters inside of it. And then if I want to quickly convert it into a quick action, I can just say, let whatever variable I'm trying to access, and then say dot quick action, and then it'll automatically spit back the actual proper entity in the form of a UI application shortcut item. And you'll understand what that means when we keep going along. Okay. So the next thing I want to copy over is going to be right here, action types. So this was a really nifty hack that I found. Enums technically, or enums, however you want to say it, technically cannot have a type. It's very restrictive what kind of types you can have. I can't really put a custom type in here. But someone came up with a really interesting workaround where they said you can create different cases, and then if you reference the case and then say dot instance, you can feed, depending on the case, you can spit back different values of any type you'd like. So you'll understand what I mean in the whole point of this as we keep going. So the point is that he created 5 different cases, okay, and associated with them, when you, for instance, are accessing the case of dynamic 1 and you say, action types dot dynamic 1 and you say dot quick or dot instance, it will return a quick action item with very specific things for that. So quick action dynamic 1, first dynamic, and the subtitle and the icon. So I like using cases as opposed to creating them on the fly because I know that I'm going to get the same thing every time, or I should say enums and cases, because I like the consistency that comes with them. I don't accidentally mistype something. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll move on to the next piece, the next thing I want to do is I want to outline what I would call the dynamic actions. And these are just going to be what I want to use. So these two buttons, the dynamic 1 and dynamic 2, will be once you've launched the app, these will be the first two dynamic options that you might be able to present to a user. Okay, and the way we add dynamic quick actions is different than the way we add static quick actions. For now, I'm just defining these so I can use them later. It's just an array of the quick actions. And then I'm going to just show a couple more things. I need to copy two more things over, and we'll talk about them. The first one is a function called getAction, and it's where I can send a string forward, and then it's expected to return a quick action, and it's going to try to run through the action types, which we've decided is here, and it's going to sift through all the different cases. We can only use this because this conforms to case iterable, and it's going to return the first one where the type variable of the instance of that case, so the type variable of the instance of that case is equal to whatever you feed forward. And if something does conform, we'll return that action.instance. And if it does not conform, we'll return nil. Hence, it's an optional return. And then lastly, we are going to create this observable object class called quick action observable. And we're going to have a published selected action, which will be an optional quick action. The whole point of this is that we create something that we can kind of read back and forth. Anytime a change is made, it'll show us on the UI side, and you'll understand where that comes into play momentarily. So that is it for the logic file. The next one we need to go ahead and modify is this one. And ever since SwiftUI 2.0, there's no such thing as the app delegate or the scene delegate. Those things aren't by default. Not to say they don't exist, but they are not by default. So what do we need to do in here? Well, let's go back and look at the finished code. I want to give a really big shout out to these two links that I got from Medium. Medium was very helpful. I found two different ways to create quick actions, but I didn't like some pieces about it. What I did not like is the way that they set up their, I guess the model and the view relationship. I didn't like how it was built. And I feel like the way we're doing it in this, when we deal with cases and specific outputs, the predictable outputs, it's much better for consistent UI manipulation when you click on a quick action. So you can go to these links. They'll be in the project that gets uploaded. You can find them in this. It'll be underneath this file right here, code tutorial quick actions. Okay. So I recommend if you want an extra read, they give you a little bit more information on the technical side of things. As you know, I'm not a coder by training, just kind of for fun. So I give you more of the practical way to approach everything. So I copied all this over, and you'll understand why I copied this over as well. We're going to talk about that. But for now, it's commented out and it's irrelevant. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to finish setting up this page. Okay, that's going to be the code tutorial underscore quick actions app, and inside of here, this is where you have, you'll know you're on the right one because it'll say as long as you're using XCode 12, you should be using. That's what you should be using. You'll see that we have this persistence control that's in there by default. You'll see a window group and content view. So that's how you'll know you're in the right place. We need to add a few different things here. We need to first, I'm going to copy these over and we'll talk about them. So this is how we're going to be able to access the scene, okay, and this is going to be how we're able to access the app delegate. And both of these things are needed so that way, essentially, these are entry points for our quick actions, okay. And you'll ignore this error for now. We'll resolve that momentarily. And then we have let quick action observable equal a quick action observable. And the whole point of that one right there is that we are creating our first instance of our observable object with a published variable, which will allow us to make changes and see those changes on the UI. Okay, so let's go over to the next part. For the next part, we have, this is the same thing that you see here, window group, but the one thing we need to add here is we need to copy over, we need to pass forward an environment object. So .environment object quick action observable. What that's saying is that this object, as long as I've created an sorry, not this one, I apologize. This one right here, as long as I've created it now, I can pass it forward. Content view will now inherit that, okay? And now we'll scroll down, and this piece was a big shout out to those Medium links because they gave me the bulk of this next piece. And I did make some changes to it, but essentially we'll go right here and add it to the end of window group. So we're checking for a change in the scene phase, okay? And that scene phase, of course, is just the .scene phase attribute within the environment. And we're trying to see as it changes, we're going to do different things when it changes, maybe when the scene changes to active, inactive, or background, or just kind of an unknown default. So in the active state, what we want to do, let's go ahead and get rid of these two errors. We're going to come back and talk about everything from here to here. We will talk about that in just one moment. I'm going to copy a few things over just so we can get rid of these errors. First, I'm going to copy over var shortcut item to process, and that is going to be the UI application shortcut item that we'll be able to essentially use for the entry point when we click on something and we get into the app. Okay, so that should get rid of this error. I'm going to hold off on fixing this one because there's more code that we need to talk about to fix that one. Just ignore it for now. So you'll see that when this scene phase becomes active, we're essentially checking to see is there a value for the type key within the dictionary of user info. So shortcut item to process, aka an object that is of type UI application shortcut item, has a .userinfo library, or I should say dictionary, and in that there should be a key of type, a key of the string in quotations type, and there should be a value for it. By default, there is no value. The only time it finally receives a value, it only receives a value once, and that value is when you actually click on a quick action, and you'll see how that happens. But so it's essentially searching. It's saying, hey, does shortcut item to process, does its user info dictionary have a value for the key string name type? And if not, just return. But if it does, we get to keep going forward. And we're actually going to go forward and say, if so, I want to take quick action observable. We're going to change its selected action property, which, if you remember, was a published variable. And we're going to say it's equal to the output of the getAction function. And we're going to pass forward the string type. So let's parse that out for a second. What we're saying is, we go to the getAction function. We're saying, hey, we're going to run through this function, feeding forward a type string, and it should return a quick action if that actually existed, and if not, it should return nothing, meaning that for some reason there was an issue with the quick action. And then what is this right here, .selected action? If you remember, that was this observable object we created right here within, so we had created this quick action observable, which is an observable object, and that is just changing the selected action, which is a published variable of type optional quick action. So that's it for the active section. For inactive, we're not really doing anything there, and we are doing something for background. So technically, when I run this app for the very first time, okay, so let's go ahead and look at this one right here. When I run this app for the very first time, let's go ahead and let's remove the app from the phone. This is the finished product, the rough draft I created in advance. Okay, I'm gonna save it, and unfortunately, you actually probably won't be able to understand what I'm gonna say. Let's kill it. So before this app is actually opened, when it has been downloaded but not yet open, we would only ever see first action and second action. We'd never see these dynamics, okay? Because those only get added when for the first time this app enters the background. By default, first action and second action, those are static ones that everyone sees, and those are actually added into the P list, which we'll get into. For first dynamic and second dynamic, the only reason those are actually added by default is because the simulator technically runs it first, and I sent it to the background. So where does that happen? That happens right here, where we say case.background. We'll say var shortcut items is going to be equal to the UI application shared.shortcut items. And we're saying, hey, if the shortcut items are empty, then go ahead and add those too, okay? And let's go ahead and look at that again. So here it is. You'll notice that because it went to the background for the first time, we have first dynamic and second dynamic. But notice the next piece here, before I open it again, you'll see that it says, if I get sent to the background again, and shortcut items is not empty, then go ahead and change the first item there and change it and make it dynamic 3, okay? So let's go ahead and look at that. We click on it and we go home and hold it down. Lo and behold, we changed it. And so we've showed you now how to change what the dynamic quick actions are, okay? So to go over that, for the first time you send it to the background, shortcut items will be empty, so we'll end up in this part of the loop. And if we're in that loop, then what we're doing is we're saying for each action in the original list of all dynamic actions, which if you recall, we defined as just dynamic 1 and dynamic 2, go ahead and create a quick action for each. And if we're leaving for the second time or greater, then go ahead and change the first one from dynamic action 1 to dynamic action 3. And sure enough, that's what we have. Instead of having first and second, now we have third and second. Okay? And then you have UI applications, .shared, .shortcut items is going to be equal to shortcut items. And that's pretty much it. So that's it for that section. Okay? So we have that also in our code tutorial _ quick actions at this point. At this point you should have that. The only other things we need to add here into this file are these two sections right here. I'm going to copy them over and we'll talk about them. So they should be at the largest scope. Okay, they should not be within the struct of code tutorial _ quick actions app. You have the app delegate, which we've created for the first time here. It's conforms to NS object and UI application delegate. And if you start typing these functions in, you should get some of these by default. And this one right here is essentially what happens when you click on a quick action, but the app has not yet been running. So this area is what runs when you are, for instance, let's go ahead and kill it. And then I click on one of these quick actions. Boom. That ran through here. Because it was killed, it was not active at all, and then we opened it. As opposed to, now we're just in the background and we open it again. Or actually, now we're in the background and we hold down and we go to second dynamic. That ran through here. So this was creating a custom scene delegate, which conforms to UI responder and UI window scene delegate. And all you need is this one function. In either case, we're essentially taking the shortcut item that brought us in. We're setting shortcut item to process, which is this one from earlier, equal to that shortcut item that brought us in. And all we have to do then is technically we're going to end up running through here, .active, and it runs through this piece of logic that we just went through earlier. Okay, and that's it. So that's the app delegate, and that's the custom scene delegate. Last but not least, all we have to do now is modify content view. So if I were to run this right now on the iPhone 12, you should just see hello, and none of these quick actions will work. Okay, you'll just see hello. Will we even have quick actions at this point? Yeah, we'll have the dynamics. We haven't set the statics yet, so we can't forget about that. So let's go ahead and just fix up that content view. That's a pretty small one, okay? All we need is this junk right here. We'll go ahead and paste that in. We have environment object var quick action observable. It's of type quick action observable. And whenever you have an environment object, it always assumes, I mean, this is always assuming, it's almost forcing a typecast of non-optional. It's saying like you cannot run content view unless you have passed this forward. If you try to add this line, but in its parent view, aka this one, you did not have this written right here. If you did not have this written, you would get an error, and the whole thing would crash. In fact, your canvas wouldn't run, and your simulator likely would crash as well. But this is something that does not show up as an error. They're counting on you to catch this. So what I mean by that is it's not going to show up as like one of those red errors that you see on the sidebar here. It's just, you're going to run it and it's just going to crash. And you're going to have to understand that's what happened. It relies on you to catch that. So then we have selected, actually we didn't even use this. Truthfully, this was from one of those Medium articles, so we're not even going to need that. Let's get rid of that. All we have underneath here is a body and a VStack that has a text that says quick actions will appear below. And then if the quick action observable.selected action is not equal to nil, technically we're saying if the title is not equal to nil. But the title was never optional. It's the parent, which is the selected action that was optional. So we're saying if selected action is not equal to nil, then go ahead and show us what the title of that selection action was. But if not, then we never actually end up in here. We don't show anything. That's why if I take this and I run this now, you'll see that immediately we've not actually came in through a quick action, so it doesn't show us anything below here. It just has nothing. But when I enter it through a quick action, so code tutorial quick actions, and I say third dynamic, there it says third dynamic. Now, we're all done here. The only thing we have not done yet is modify the info plist for the static. And for the statics, let's go ahead and do that really quick. So for the statics, I'm going to go in here and say open as. So you have right click on the info plist. I say open as. You don't have to do it via source code, but I actually think this is like one of the few times going via source code is going to be the easiest option. And I'm going to go underneath the bottommost key in array. I'm going to enter. It should be within the dictum plist. Okay. I'm going to go back over to what I had prepared in advance, which is this. And I'm going to copy that over. And I'm going to paste it, and we'll talk about it really quick. This is essentially saying, hey, by the way, every time this app is ever installed, the plist is always red. And inside of this plist, I want to create something that everyone gets access to. These are two UI application shortcut items. Okay, so the first one is from array. Sorry, the first one, I apologize, is from dict to dict. And the second one is from dict to dict. Okay, and as long as we are within that, sorry, from dict to dict, right here. As long as we are within that, and both of those are within the array, by the way. So what that's saying is that this key, aka UI application shortcut items, refers to this array from opening to closure. And inside of it is two dicts, and the dicts are very similar, and they both have the same general items that you found in the ones we created programmatically for dynamics. We have an item type, we have an icon type, we have a title, we have a subtitle, and we have user info. Okay, and you'll see that you can just kind of read through it, and you'll see that it's like almost a perfect mimic of what we had in the logic, which is right here: type, title, subtitle, icon, which you see again here: type, localized title, localized subtitle, icon, and of course user info. Okay, and that's pretty much it. So if you have any questions at all, please feel free to leave it in the comments. But right now, when I run this, remember, we're on the right project. So I run it, save it, run it, and let's go ahead and see what we get. We should get the statics and the dynamics. There it is. Static, static, those never change, and these dynamics. All right, a bit of a long tutorial, but I hope we got through everything pretty nicely and completely. So if you have any questions, leave them below. Any comments, leave them below. And please don't forget to subscribe. That's how we grow, and I look forward to bringing more to you. Thank you, guys.